This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast, and I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. It's Thursday, December 15th. Hi everyone, this is Stacey Marie Ishmael. Quick news about this episode. We recorded it before the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried and all of the various criminal and civil allegations against him. We'll have much more on what happened there in episodes later this week. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Anne Herrera, senior crypto editor for Bloomberg News.
In today for Stacey Marie Ishmael.
Bitcoin ATMs have often been a symbol of crypto popularity. During the digital asset boom, they kept on appearing in places where you would think, why would there be a Bitcoin ATM here? Somewhere like in Amherst County, Virginia, a place that has no hospital, but sure does have a Bitcoin ATM. The number of crypto ATMs in the US peaked at over just 34,000 in August, and has since dipped slightly, according to Coin ATM Radar. These ATMs were like the shrines of the then growing faith in crypto. But this faith isn't spreading nowadays. So could these monuments withstand the downturns of the current market after the FTX implosion? Here to join me to look at the current state of Bitcoin ATMs is Bloomberg reporter Carly Wana.
Store owners said maybe back in the day, a year ago, they might get, one guy told me, maybe 4 or 5 people who would come to the machine. And now it's maybe 1, maybe 2, but maybe nobody.
So before we get into what's going on with Bitcoin ATMs now, let's have a chat about what actually Bitcoin ATMs are.
I have seen the Bitcoin, like the buy Bitcoin signs that are on bodegas and gas stations and stuff like that, and just always thought, how odd. But I never engaged, never even noticed the physical machines before.
Because it seemed during the previous cycle, they sort of exploded, especially in the US. They were everywhere, you mentioned bodegas. They were in rural locations and, in the middle of nowhere. So there are many, but it is quite telling that you say you haven't noticed. Maybe you weren't the target audience.
Maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention.
So why would someone use one? Like, what were companies saying?
It seems pretty easy. The machine is in your face, right? They are there. Like, they're in gas stations next to the soda or the candy. It's a sign. A lot of them flash the price of Bitcoin for the day at you. So you see it, you think about it. And it also means that you can buy Bitcoin with cash. So for some people who, if they don't have a bank account or they don't feel like going to a bank, there is that benefit. And there's also a certain degree of anonymity, at least for smaller transactions. Different providers have different rules about how much information you need for how much money that you're transacting with. But in a lot of cases, it can be less information than if you needed to go to an actual bank and deal with an account that way.
Let's talk a bit about the metrics and dynamics of how they work, the economics, let's say. Who pays whom? Why would you want one in your store? And, how do they make money?
So as far as the store owner's perspective, that one does make some sense as to why you would want one in your store. If you own a bodega, the machine is another source of income, and it's not highly obtrusive. It can sit someplace. It is like a physical machine, but at the same time, you don't have to do that much. Oftentimes, the way that it works is, you get some sort of rent that's paid to you if you're the store owner, so that's a benefit. And you don't have to handle it. There's somebody else who comes and they pick up the cash and then they leave. And I went to a few bodegas. I talked to store owners and they just said that, some man would come like every week, every few weeks, something along those lines, take out the cash, put them where it, deal with whatever needed to be dealt with. They're pretty hands off. And, one guy even told me, I don't really pay any attention to it. Maybe it gets me a customer every now and then. A customer's a customer. So what do I really care? And so for the store owners, it really does. It's not a big commitment, and they do get paid to have them in their store. There is often a rent type agreement.
So I guess we talked about the rally. That was then. We've been in a crypto winter now for several months where volumes on exchanges have dropped. Prices have fallen significantly since a year ago, which leads me to why I guess we started looking at Bitcoin ATMs again. Can you sort of walk our listeners through why we thought it was a good moment to check in again?
Right. So if you look at data online, we mainly used Coin ATM Radar. And I mean, you got to look it up. It's like a mountain. It just increases and increases for the amount of Bitcoin ATMs that were installed in 2020 and especially in 2021. It does kind of look like it went up with the price of Bitcoin as it was shooting up. And it's not that necessarily there are fewer. There was a peak in August of 2022 for the amount of Bitcoin ATMs that were in the United States. And actually in September, more Bitcoin ATMs were taken down than they were installed, which is like a first for the industry. So the number of crypto ATMs peaked around 34,000 in August. And since then, they've kind of come down a little bit, fluctuated more. And so our question was, in this machine that it's physical, it's in the store, it flashes the price of Bitcoin at you when you walk in. If you're somebody who is passing by, if the price is, 19,000 as it was when I was going around to these, or now, more around 16, 17,000 even, that's a lot less appealing than 60,000. So it's a question of, all right, these machines are still there. The data is showing that there are a few of them getting installed. Is anyone even really using them? Are companies feeling okay about it? So we had a lot of questions, and we asked a lot of people a lot of the same questions as to how the industry is doing after this massive boom.
Yeah, and they many of them seem quite sort of bullish still. They're saying, they had to kind of be a bit more deliberate, maybe focus on areas that had more foot traffic or more mainstream and less rural. And I remember when we were reporting early days, you were looking at the map because you can, for listeners, you can search online and find all the maps of the Bitcoin ATMs in the US. And you mentioned that there was one in the town you come from. And
oh, yeah. I mean, I'm from Macon, Georgia. I am really surprised, but there were, several around the area. And I was just wondering who from my hometown would be possibly using this. Right now, I'm in New York City, and in some ways, and maybe it's because I'm around people who deal more with crypto, but I'm like, yeah, sure, crypto ATMs in Macon, Georgia. Just the thought of somebody using a crypto ATM it's so funny to me. I can't imagine who their clientele would be.
So, we looked at usage, and based on data from Chainalysis, we saw that usage had dropped significantly. But obviously, you went there too. And although this is anecdotal, can you give us a sense of what it was like? You were literally just waiting there to see if someone showed up.
Yeah, I just stood by the Bitcoin ATMs, hung out with some store owners, maybe chatted with a customer or two. I never saw anybody use them. I talked to a lot of store owners, even some stores, because you want a broader sample. I called some random places, and the consensus was that really hardly anybody was using these. Again, it's anecdotal. Maybe one guy would say like one or two people occasionally would come in. Another thing that did come up with at least two of the store owners is that they did say that they felt like there was a drop in demand for usage given Bitcoin's decline in prices. I mean, that makes sense. That's what the data has seen. But it was also interesting to know that store owners said maybe back in the day, a year ago, they might get, one guy told me, maybe 4 or 5 people who would come to the machine. And now it's maybe 1, maybe 2, but maybe nobody, So it does kind of seem like these machines are sitting a little bit more in waiting for customers that they perhaps once had more of.
Up next, more with Bloomberg reporter Carly Wana on the present and the future of Bitcoin ATMs. We were expecting a Bitcoin SPAC, right? A Bitcoin ATM SPAC. And then also, that's still something that might be in the cards, right? Or not? What sort of is the outlook for movement there?
Right. Yeah. So I actually did look this up. There was a company that we were reporting on called Bitcoin Depot. They were still trying to go public when we were doing our reporting.
Bitcoin Depot is a fast-growing cryptocurrency ATM network, letting you buy and sell Bitcoin and multiple other cryptocurrencies instantly at thousands
They
of
said it would happen in
locations
Q1 of 2023. Looked it up. They issued a statement earlier this month saying that they still intended to do that. And, one thing that has changed since we were doing the bulk of our reporting is that, the FTX empire has collapsed. Crypto prices have, plunged even more than they were already down. And so the fact that earlier this month, the company said that they're still plowing ahead with the SPAC deal is interesting and of note.
Another Bitcoin ATM provider who was also tied to sort of the contagion now in crypto in a way. One of the companies everybody's been following is Genesis, the lender, and we've been reporting how they have been trying to raise money from investors and warning that if they don't manage to raise, they might have to file for bankruptcy. So can you maybe talk a bit about that, about sort of how one of the Bitcoin ATM companies was sort of connected to Genesis, the lender?
Right, yeah. So our colleague, Rachel Butt, she found some really interesting stuff about the debt of CoinCloud. It runs about 5,000 ATMs across the US and Brazil. And she found that they had tapped advisors to help them rework about $125 million of debt that they had accumulated to fund an aggressive expansion. She reported that back in November. So again, things have changed quite a bit very rapidly in the crypto space, but it does raise some questions about these companies that may have incurred quite a large bit of debt and what they're going to do with them. That company we were talking about earlier, Bitcoin Depot, that does still intend on going public via SPAC, they owe $42.4 million under a term loan bearing a 15% interest rate as of June 30th, according to a proxy statement. So it's a question of, how sustainable are these businesses? It does seem that some of them owe a fair bit of money. Bitcoin Depot, again, they said that they're still going to go forward. The SPAC deal could end up injecting some very much needed cash into that business.
So, one of the pressures that the industry is facing in general now, not just Bitcoin ATMs, is regulatory pressure, right? We've seen, especially after the collapse of FTX, regulators looking to crack down, policymakers as well. What's the current environment like for Bitcoin ATMs, and could that be seen as another sort of threat for growth in the space?
Right. It does depend on where you are. So, for example, Singapore, January, they banned crypto ATMs. They said you have to shut down your operations. In the UK, they've also taken some more aggressive measures. It was in March that they said that they hadn't approved any machines, and they told operators you have to remove any of your units that are still in use. From where I am in the United States, regulators have been a little bit more hands-off, I guess you could say. There's not a ton of laws in place kind of monitoring these machines. However, there are warnings, there are concerns.
The FBI warning about fraudulent schemes targeting cryptocurrency ATMs, with criminals directing victims to use the ATMs and send funds that are then used for illegal activity. The ATMs are found around
There was a report issued in September 2021 from the Government Accountability Office, and they said that crypto machines could be used to facilitate drug trafficking. It's also recommended that they should be reviewed for their registration requirements, and federal agencies agreed, but there hasn't necessarily been a lot of movement on that regulation space. So it's kind of another issue of everybody agrees, yes, there should be regulation for this crypto thing, but there are questions about who, how, and what exactly that means.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball, but going forward, what do you expect, or at least what are you looking at? What are we looking at in terms of Bitcoin ATMs? What would be interesting for you to see?
I would say dicey, I guess. All of crypto could go for more regulation. I could see this being something that could get a little bit more lawmaker interest, intrigue, especially, in the US. There hasn't been much, but there have been warnings, and other countries and places have taken actions against them. So there is a question of what US regulators might do. There also might be fewer operators. This is something that even, like you said, Anna, the companies that we talked to, they were really bullish. They were super excited about crypto ATMs and the future, but a lot of them even said that they expect more consolidation in the space, right? So there are some really big Bitcoin ATM operators, but there's a lot of smaller players too. And now that each machine isn't getting as much transactions, there are questions of if it's a sustainable business model to have a one-off machine every now and again. So some of the larger players, and of course this does play into their interests, but they kind of said there would be consolidation and there wouldn't be as many operators and as many providers, and people would start to seek out trusted platforms or kind of known names in the Bitcoin ATM space. Whether they're right or not, who knows? But that was their guess. And I guess as far as utilization, we have seen that the usage and the installation of these machines, they're not separate from Bitcoin prices. So again, we have no crystal ball. All that we know is that right now, the price of Bitcoin is significantly lower than it was a year ago. I don't know where it will be a year from now, but I would have to assume that since the history of crypto ATMs has been somewhat tied to Bitcoin prices, that the future of crypto ATMs will also be tied to those same prices.
So I think you'll have to come and report back on whether your hometown still has a Bitcoin ATM as a judge, as a meter to measure whether the industry is still going strong.
Yeah, I'll check in Christmas. I'll be going home so soon, so maybe I'll stop it.
Great. All right. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you.
You can find more of Carly Wana's reporting on the Bloomberg Terminal and on Bloomberg.com. For more, be sure to check out our twice-weekly newsletter, Bloomberg Crypto.
This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net. The supervising producer of Bloomberg Crypto is Vicky Vergolina. Our senior producer is Janet Babin. Our producers are Mohammed Farouk and Sharon Barrero. Our associate producers are Ty Butler and Moses Undum. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael. We'll be back tomorrow.